All right, welcome all to the regular meeting of August 8th. I'll do a roll call. We've got Shelby, Sarah, Daryl, Larry. That's me, and we'll elevate Anthony,
Alice just came in.
and Alice just came in. So she'll tune in. So we have Alice. So we definitely
I'm
have.
here.
Hi, Alice.
Hi.
So we definitely have a quorum. Um, the reading of the minutes of July 11th. Does anybody have anything on that? I've got one item. It's on page 3 at the very bottom of the page. This is on 101 Macedonia Road, the horizon line. It says the plan is to raise the roof, add dormers, and construct a 2-car garage with storage above. Mr. Warwick said that the house is not fairly seen. It shouldn't be fairly seen. It's barely seen. Anyone else have anything? All right, so do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of July 11th?
I motion we approve the minutes from July 11th with the amendment that Wes just stated.
Second.
Thanks, Daryl. All in favor, signify by raising your hand. All right, so minutes are approved. Okay, does anyone in the audience have a public comment that they wish to share with the commission?
Currently, I would, if I have just a moment of your time.
Okay, Josh.
All right. Well, I'm Joshua Craig. Been a member in this town for at least 42 years now. And I just air some concerns about the 21 Bridge Street property, as well as which is first thing on your docket for tonight. It looks like the business of Moto Riot that is trying to obtain a zoning permit for that current location.
Right.
My main concern is the property as well as the Moto Riot. I know I'm not actually active in town mainly due to my job. I'm in emergency medicine and I travel a lot. I'm unfortunately outside of the town for 4 to 5 days a week. So I don't get to be as active as I used to. I was a member in the volunteer fire department for 10 years as well.
Josh, if I could stop you here, your comment would be served because it still is a public hearing when we get to the application. This is really a chance for somebody to speak to something not on the agenda.
Sure, if that's the best time to appropriate the response, let me know when it is and I will make sure I'm there.
Hang on, you'll have your chance.
Thank you very much.
So Wes, this is just a site plan approval, so there is no public hearing involved in this application.
Ty, I beg your pardon. There's not. All right.
Okay. All right. Well, it's not so much to the permit. I mean, the permit is cohering to what I have as an issue. My issue is the property itself, as well as the just being that there's a docket for zoning to add to that piece of property. It regards to that issue as well for Moto Riot. My issue is that 21 Bridge Street property has a multitude of businesses running out of it. And concurrently now that I've seen, as well as the town charter is when the state, I don't know how many businesses are actually approved to be there. I know there's a business of landscaping that goes out of the back. There is one registered Volvo dealer that is registered with the state that's occupying there, as well as the Iron Horse is still registered to work through there. But I'm unaware of any more else. I know, and I have reviewed the minutes for the meeting for what has been going and transpiring with the Moto Riot. So I am very familiar with your guys' attempt to try to work with him and make it adhere to our zoning policies. But my issue is continued neglect in regard to the community. Just last week, I've visually saw two different industrial trucks parked on the sidewalk and had to watch two different women with their strollers push their strollers and their children across the street to maneuver away from those vehicles that were parked directly in front of the building. And his employees are actually parking on Elizabeth Street. So my concern would probably be justified to when the school starts and what kind of hazard that provides to the children, as well as the community with them on the street side of Elizabeth Street, as well as continuing to park on Main Street. I don't know what the hazard or emergency hazardous waste vehicles were there for. I'm sure it has something to do with their trying to adhere to the zoning, but we have a continued issue with him and neglect to the town. And knowing the owner of the property as Guy Morey, I know we have a continued issue with him for a neglect to, let's say, follow the zoning issues on his own property up on Route 7, is having an issue down on his another property in a business district here in town. So I find it difficult for the town zoning commission to take proper assessment of what businesses are there and what he may say is allocated for parking when we don't know exactly how many businesses may be legitimately or illegitimately running out of there, as well as he has apartments above it. I know I spoke with the fire commissioner, or the new one, Tim Limbos, in town, and he has an approval for one apartment upstairs, but I am fairly concerned or fairly aware of at least two different people that live in two different apartments there. So I don't know if everything that's going on at that site plan is, let's say, on the up and up of what's going on in the community. And I find it hard to believe that he's going to be truthful with you, considering both him and the Jason Dornick have been continually neglecting the responsibility to be honest with the town for who is parking where and what's actually going to arbitrarily be run out of that business. I don't want him to admit to say he's, let's say, giving each place 10 parking spots or 25 to each, and he ends up double booking because we don't know what actually is signed or allocated, because we don't know which actual businesses are running out of there or what are permitted to. I know he rents the back half of it out for the landscaping business, but he also rents one of the buildings out to store equipment and vehicles for storage for the winter for people as well. And I know that's not a authorized business that was registered through the town as well. So as a member of the community and somebody that goes to the Catholic church right next door, I find it hard to believe that somebody like Jason or Guy could have such a negative rapport with the town and continue to run a business. I know he had a grand opening in April, and I don't believe you should have a grand opening without the zoning commission approving of the business. So at this point, he's been running a business out of there for 4 months, and that's a third of a year. And he's still, as of last week and today, even with the parking, not adhering to the zoning. And I find it an issue. I don't know if anybody else in the town has brought it up as an issue, but I just like, being that it's one of the things on the docket, something to reflect their negative rapport with the town, starting with the first meeting and continuing throughout for the last 4 months. I don't know if there is going to be any discussions to Jason, but at this point, it's something that I think should be put into a cease and desist if he's going to continue to neglect the community and the responsibilities we all have to it. I guess that's the majority of my issue, is the concern for the community as well as the well-being for the students that are going to be starting back at the elementary school coming up here at the end of August.
Josh, thank you very much. As you know, we have, this has been a long slog through this application. They've had to provide a lot of information, which tonight we'll see some of that information. And then the commission will debate it. But thank you very much for your input.
I do appreciate my time. Thank you.
Thank you. And Justin, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you. So my name is Justin Potter, the president of Kent Affordable Housing. I submitted a letter regarding the sort of the status of our collaboration with the Kent Volunteer Fire Department to the planning and zoning. Ty provided some very helpful information and feedback on some of the options that we were considering. And I just wanted to give the commission just the opportunity to ask any questions of me here, just because it's not on the agenda. If you don't have any, that's fine.
Did everyone see that letter it came in quite late.
All right.
I guess we haven't seen it. Justin, can you give us some time so we can review that?
Yeah, surely. It doesn't require any feedback from the commission, really. We just wanted to provide an update on two different possible directions we were going. And Ty provided some useful information and feedback on that. So, but I concluded with the letter with, I look forward to answering any questions or comments from the commission, and so I just wanted to give you the opportunity to do that. So,
All right,
that's all.
terrific, terrific.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else with oral communication? All right, so let's move on to 5B, application 0624C, Guy Mari, Jason Dornick, 21 Bridge Street. As you know, this has been a long haul. We've gone through probably half a dozen meetings and extensions, et cetera. This was the final meeting that could be extended without having to deny the application. But as I understand, they have gotten through the sewer commission. They have an approval from the sewer commission that just happened last night. And the fire marshal has given a letter of approval. I realize that there are, and also the parking has been upgraded with Joe Manley's blessings. Ty, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. There was a slight change to the handicap spots after Joe went out to review. He found that the angle of the spot and the width of one of the spots needed to accommodate like a van. So they shifted that around, but it really doesn't reduce the part. I think it reduces the parking by one spot at most, and they have more than enough by the calculations of the business that we have. So it really didn't make an impact as far as planning and zoning goes. It just kind of changes the site plan.
So have they fulfilled all of the items that you have requested?
Yeah. So, when you go down the checklist of what's required for a site plan approval, all of everything's been met as far as I can see.
Right. So I was mistaken that this is not a public hearing. This is just a site plan approval. So many of the items that we could use in a public hearing for a special permit don't apply here. So there is no closing of this. So I would simply say that the application is complete. I don't really like, as Josh had pointed out, the neighborliness of the applicant. There have been many complaints on this project. This is almost like an urban business in a rural setting. It's not the best. So I thought I'd send it out to let's talk about the application. In my view, it is complete. We're not here to judge personalities. We can't. We've got to go by the regulation. Shelby, what do you think?
I think you're right, that if they've complied with all the regulations for the site approval, then the commission really has no choice but to approve it. But I do take note of Ty's letter to them noting a number of violations and Josh's comments about violations as well. And I think it may be important for us to be very vigilant and to check any future violations. And the discrepancies between I think what Josh has pointed out about actual use is something that is a bit concerning. The number of businesses there and the number of where employees are parking as well certainly is something that should be of concern to us, and it may require just constant following up and checking any future violations. But if the application as submitted meets all of the regulations, then at least for the site plan approval, I don't think the commission has any choice but to go forward with it. But doesn't mean that they should be allowed to violate other use regulations.
Sarah, how about you?
I guess the first question I have quickly for Larry is, in watching the sewer commission meeting earlier today, was the revisions that the sewer commission requested, were those sent in?
I'm assuming I'm the Larry you're talking to.
Yes.
Yeah, yes, they were. Yeah, we sent them in. I sent them in at like 10 o'clock last night. So yeah, I got everything everything they needed, submitted it to the state, and yes, correct. We got everything in.
Great, thank you. And in relation to the public comment, you know, I'm a resident of Elizabeth Street, and I have seen the cars parked out here. While it's unusual, it's not outside of what's legally allowed to on parking for the street. Of course, when the school are in, there are certain parking restrictions and hours on there, but you know, it's again usual, but it's not outside of what's allowed for the town or the street. And I think that there are a number of, it seems to me the building as a whole presents a number of challenges for us, and some potential violations, but it's not necessarily the business itself that should be held accountable for the building owner. However, because in Charles and Motor Riot, I think started to operate before they were fully licensed by the town, that does present a further challenge for us in consideration of the other businesses in town that have gone through the process, and have been, you know, I think who have not started to operate until they had received all of their permits and things, and we should take that into consideration, particularly for us as a whole, as a commission, in reviewing these types of permits in the future too, and making sure that we're fully aware of the timeline and the process on that. That's sort of where I'm laying my head, Wes.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Daryl, how's about you?
I think we need to obviously analyze the application for this business and make sure that it's doing what it needs to do to comply with our zoning regulations. I think the discussions that we've had with the overall site were helpful in terms of bringing issues to light that are of a concern to us and should be of the property owner. I think if the information that we have now had been presented, you know, months ago at the initial application meeting, it probably would have been approved much earlier. Now that the business has been in operation, you know, without a permit for these months, and still doesn't have a state permit, which is based on the approvals that might be achieved tonight, you know, is there a problem with issuing a zoning permit for a business that's in violation of not having a state license, not having a permit? You know, sort of what precedent are we setting? I think we do have the information in a complete site plan. It's just, how do we handle something that comes after the fact?
True. Well, the fact of the matter is that they couldn't get a license without zoning approval. So it's the cart before the horse. Larry, how about you?
Just a few comments. A note about the trucks. I went by there, happened to be by there the day that the trucks were there to test the waste systems. And they were parked in such a way that so nobody could trip over or fall into the manholes. So I think that caused the trucks to be in a specific position. They're gone now. Otherwise, I think we'll see tonight that they have completed the requirements that we set before them. And I think we can't really put the building's problems as a whole onto the specific business. That's all. What we do, how we go back to the building owner, I think it's a separate issue from approval for Motor Riot.
Right, I agree. Anthony, how about you?
I agree. I think we have to focus on the site plan and what we're required to opine on versus all the other stuff, I'll call it, that obviously has value, but as a board, we're not, we have no authority to comment on. But then we also, I think, have to be diligent in making sure that, that the external impacts aren't happening to the community, if any. So I think basically we should focus on the site plan application if we think it's complete and if we think that they met all the requirements. I mean, that's our purview.
Alice? You're on mute, Alice.
I agree with the other comments commissioners have said. It's too bad it got off on the sort of wrong foot, so to speak. It would have been nice to have been more clear about, is the primary discussion between the property owner or the business, you know, and there are multiple businesses there. But I agree with everybody else based on what our job is and meeting the criteria of what we require in a plan. And we just have to move forward and hope it works out for the best.
And Ann?
You know, what's putting me off a little bit is everybody's comment that we're going to have to monitor this and watch it closely. I'm not sure Ty has that kind of time or wants to be put in that position. I think there is a certain element of responsibility that a business owner has to adhere to. And I don't like the fact that we're being put in a position where we have to monitor this business.
And I couldn't agree with you more. Chris?
Wes, I just got here. I got here late.
Yeah, but you can comment. You couldn't vote, but you can comment. Yeah.
I didn't hear anything that anybody else said. I did hear what I did come in when Sarah was talking, so I've been trying to catch up.
Yeah.
It looks to me like they have everything in place. I don't know if Ty can correct me or not.
They do, Chris. They've completed all the requirements of the site plan application.
Yeah, I mean, it's been dragging out for a while. I'm seeing a few new site plans that I never saw before. Could be something that I overlooked, definitely, but
it's just a change of the accessibility spot per Joe Manley's request. So it's not a huge impact, but it was a slight change to the site plan. So that's the new That's the newest version, the modified version. It
So
moves cap spot.
I mean, it looks good to me. It works for the plan. I mean, it works for the for this drawn out sketch that's here. I'm not opposed to the business. I've been saying this many, many times. I like the idea of the business. I was just a little, like Ann said, I was put off by how everything was presented and how it's been moving along. I would say if they have all of their ducks in the row now, I don't have an issue with it. I just, you know, it's been dragging out and you know, we have to make a decision tonight, so.
Right. Well, that we do. Ty, can there be a standing cease and desist until they get their state permit? Because that's really the issue, isn't it?
So, I mean, there is no cease and desist right now. There had been a notice of violation issued, basically saying that if they didn't get their approval tonight, then we would go forward with the cease and desist.
Right.
So issuing a cease and desist at this point, if you're planning on approving, seems kind of harsh, if I could say, you know. Kind of
So,
at the end of this. If you're going to deny, then, you know, obviously I'll go forward as we discuss.
yeah. Jason, how long do you think it will take to get a state permit if approved tonight?
This was the snake eating its own tail, right? Like you said, the cart before the horse. And to answer your question very transparently, probably depending on the state's response time, I would say a few weeks to a month and a half, just to give you a range, you know, to set some sort of a baseline understanding. I unfortunately don't really have a metric to work off of here, but I have worked with the state with my other businesses down in Stamford to get approval as well in Stamford, Connecticut. And that was roughly how long it took. I can't say for Kent, but let's hope for the best.
Right. So one thing we could do, I believe, and Ty, correct me if I'm wrong, we could put a condition of approval that the state permit is obtained by, say, within 2 months' time.
So, I mean, we had this discussion a little bit at the last meeting, and you had asked me to check in with Attorney Ziska on that as far as what your liability and your responsibility is to the state. And he did, you know, clarify that, you know, at any time, you know, anybody could call the state and say that, you know, they're operating without a license, but there is no real responsibility of the town to do that. There's no liability on the town to do that. You know, it's really the business itself that's taking on the risk, which I think it's, you know, a misdemeanor or
Right.
at the very least for operating in that capacity. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Well, it does in a way, but so I realize that we don't have a direct responsibility, but by approving this, we're basically saying we expect you to have a licensed business here and conduct yourself on the terms of the permit.
right. And I mean, after this is approved, what happens is there's a form that, you know, zoning, the building official and the fire marshal all have to sign off on for a locational approval that goes to the state. So, you know, we will sign off as a town, as a group saying, you know, it's appropriate for the location. And then, you know, Motor Ride has to run with that and take it to the state. And really, if the state doesn't find it appropriate, then, you know, there is some responsibility on them to come in and
Right.
stop it.
Right. I'll just add a point of clarification here. So I've been actually in charge of putting together the application for the dealership license in the state of Connecticut, and it's multi-layered for sure. But the last two elements here are the signature from Kent and a dealership insurance. right? These are the only two things we need to do, and then we can just bring it to the state of Connecticut. So there's not really much preventing us from getting this dealership license, outside of getting your approval tonight and getting an insurance plan. So hopefully that provides a bit of clarity.
Okay. All right, so this application has taken a great deal of the commission's time over the last months. Personally, I don't think much of it or what's being done here, but as a commissioner, I would say that we need to approve this and move on.
I just want to say one other thing. You know, when I love the idea of this business and everything, but just want to say this is not a good look for us as a commission. And that upsets me.
Well, and our regulations don't speak to good looks. They speak to the regulations.
And I want to chime in here. This is Jason from Motor Ride. I understand how you feel, and I don't want you to feel gaslit. I think we've known each other for a long time. And I think it's like watching two sport teams play on a field and not knowing either team. And you kind of you figure out who you want to root for by watching the sport. And you've seen a lot of survival tactics. We try and stay operating while keeping our heads down and keeping people alive in our business. And we're trying to survive and get through this process like everyone else. And I just want you to know that I understand how you feel. And I hope we can move forward on a more positive note and agree to everything moving forward.
Well, yes, and I hope you can be a good neighbor. That's my personal comment.
We'll hopefully be the Mr. Rogers of Kent.
Right. All right. So are we ready to make a decision on this? Do I hear a motion for approval? From somebody?
I motion that we approve application 00624C, Guy Maury, 21 Bridge Street, map 19, block 13, lot 10, site plan approval for dealer and repair with the extension.
Second.
Thank you, Daryl. All right, is there any further discussion on this?
Should we add the what you guys were talking about earlier? The as long as they get their license within 2 months?
Ty, what do you think about that?
I think you're separate than the state. I think your charge here is to approve it through zoning, and then the state, that's what I think.
Yeah.
I think the state needs to do their thing separately. If they don't provide a license, then you're gonna have to shut them down.
Right.
You know, and anybody can call them and have that done. If the state doesn't do it on its own.
So I think you're right, and I think that's correct.
Ty, are you prepared to follow up? And
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you don't mind, I'd just like to speak to the parking or the vehicle situation. I think that's a difficult thing to enforce, when registered cars are parked on the street or in handicapped spots. It's more of a police matter. If somebody's not happy with a parking situation, it's very hard to zoning enforce cars. But some of those complaints and managing that as an enforcement thing is difficult, but with regard to, licensing or businesses that, you know, are approved at the location that we're aware of course, I can handle enforcing and managing that.
Why are they parking on the street?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I mean, I have called them about parking at the church, and then, you know, they moved the cars from there. I've gotten some information that they, you know, are parking. I mean, even tonight, somebody said that they're parking on Elizabeth Street. You know, according to the site plan, they should have sufficient parking on the site itself. So, you know, but those,
If I may interject here, I'm not sure I understand that there's we have parked 1 or 2 cars on Elizabeth Street, but as in terms of permanency, I'm not sure I agree here. There shouldn't be any cars on Elizabeth Street, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but if there is a need to park on Elizabeth Street, is that illegal? Or are we not abiding by the law by doing that?
right. So basically, that's what I'm saying is that as far as zoning is concerned, it's very hard to, it's not something that's really enforceable from a zoning perspective, other than the fact that, you know, this application basically says that, you know, the lot itself should be able to absorb your business without
Totally.
flowing
Yeah,
over
that
into
makes
the
sense.
neighborhood.
That makes sense. There's by
But
no means
Dan's
intent.
question was whether, you know, we could handle the enforcement of that, and that part is very tricky because, like you said, you know, I'm not a police officer. Yeah, I wouldn't even know if it was your cars or your customers' cars, and same with the handicap spots. Sometimes it's like I don't have the ability to run plates, know whose cars are whose.
It wasn't just the parking. It wasn't even the parking I was referring to. It was what we were talking about earlier, that we will have to keep a watchful eye on this business to make sure that it's operating in accordance with the regulations.
I think that's right.
And that was also something the sewer commission brought up too, in terms of compliance with the building and how often they would have to do inspections.
Oh, yes, no, I don't want you to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm aware of, you know, PB Auto is there. Guy's Business is there with the motorcycles. Motor Riot will be there. There's landscaper storage in the back, and there's 2 apartments that are approved through zoning. One of the apartments is not approved by the fire marshal or the building official, but it is approved through zoning. So those are the businesses that are on record that are approved at that location. I've gone over them with Guy. He states that there's no additional businesses there. So that's kind of where we're at.
All right, any more discussion? If not, ask that we take a vote. All in favor, signify by raising your hand. All right, looks like the motion is approved. So guys, let's you know, clean it up, and we're absolutely going to be looking.
Understood. Thank you for your approval, team, and thank you to the zoning commission, the sewer commission, and everyone to help make this happen. And a formal apology for dragging this on as long as it had to go.
All right.
We've learned a lot. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. All right. So moving on to new business, we need to reappoint ARB members. Jonathan Moore, Joanne Wasty, and Jeffrey Morgan as an alternate member. Their terms expire, well, I guess they expired on the 2nd of August. So Ty, we need to reappoint them. before Monday. So is this by motion?
Yes, please.
Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion that we appoint these three super volunteers to the ARB?
I motion that we reappoint Jonathan Moore, Joanne Westy, and Jeffrey Morgan as regulars and alternates to the ARB.
Thank you,
I
sir.
second it.
Thank you, Alice. Okay, any other discussion on this matter? All in favor by signify by raising your hand. Okay, so I guess we'll see them Monday night. Good. And then 6B2, a new appointment. We need to have a architect, a registered architect. And it came to my attention that our regulations state AIA, which is a club. It's not registered by the state. They need to be a registered architect, not necessarily a member of AIA. Although many architects are members of AIA. There were two applications, right? There were two inquiries. Jill Porter, who is part-time in Kent, has expressed an interest. And then there was another fellow who lives in New Milford, practices. He's registered in New York.
That's right. Nicholas Buccello.
Yeah. Have people seen their resumes on the website? So I would say if Jill, who again is here in Kent, not that that totally matters, but she certainly has the credentials to be a member and is interested as a volunteer, which is a terrific thing. That that would be my favor. That would be my preference as a new appointment.
Hi, I'm just looking at the documents. I see Jill's on LinkedIn. Did Nick submit one too, or is it just the letter that's there?
Just a letter. Nick's came a little bit late. He just this week reached out. You know, and that's the information that he had given me. It was actually after the agenda had already been filed. So I made sure I shared it with you so you were aware there was somebody else. But he didn't provide any additional information. He did say, he has lots of experience as an architect. He's not AIA as required by the regulations, whether or not that's should be required by the regulations or not. That's what the regulations do say. He is licensed in New York and not Connecticut, and he is from New Milford. And again, the regulations do allow for other members of other towns to be member of the ARB, so that's not so much of an issue, but that's the story on it.
Thank you.
And just to point out that it is a requirement, and we no longer have a registered architect on the ARB. We need one. So would I hear a motion to ask Jill if she would be the registered architect on the ARB?
Or motion just to appoint her. She's
Motion
willing.
to appoint her, yeah.
I have one question.
Yep.
Does her part-time status, how does that affect her coming to meetings? I know the meetings are remote.
Yes. Right. So she did inquire about that, and she was relieved to know that the meetings were via Zoom. So she thought that it wouldn't be a problem for her.
And she'll have opportunity to go to the sites and, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
All right. So Larry, would you like to make that, that motion?
Yeah, I move that we accept Jill Porter's request to be the architect, resident architect at the ARB.
Second.
Thank you, Daryl. So this is for the new appointment. Do I hear any other discussions on this? All in favor, signify by raising your hand. All right. So that's terrific. It's always nice to have volunteers.
So as far as Nicholas goes, we do have an opening as an alternate. I can talk to him about that and put it on the agenda next month if he's willing.
Well, it's not necessary for this month, but
No, but I can, if
you know,
it's
if
something you'd like me to do. It's like you said, it's nice to have the volunteers. It would be nice to have
absolutely,
full board.
you know, I would suggest if he's willing, we should sign him up as an alternate.
Okay, sure, I'll talk to him.
We had 2 architects when I was on the ARB.
Oh, good. The more the better.
More
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Okay, so was that a motion I heard? Somebody like to make a motion?
I move that we appoint Jill Porter
No,
to,
not Jill. This is for the old.
oh, you mean for Nicholas? We need that
Yes,
to be,
yes, Nicholas, to ask him to become an alternate.
oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were,
No,
I don't know why we need a vote for that, do we?
No,
so we
because
don't need a vote?
he
No,
might,
I'll ask him and then I'll put it on the agenda for next month.
Perfect. Okay, that's
Yeah.
great. Great.
Sorry, I didn't think we needed
No,
a vote.
I thought we'd had to motion that too. Thank you, Ty. All right, staff reports.
So I just, we had that cannabis discussion last month, and we talked about doing maybe a survey to the community. I did check in with Mike regarding, making sure that we understood what the regulations covered and what they didn't. We have that mention of it in the retail definition. But he did confirm that, all the other sources, whether it be growing or manufacturing, that's not covered under that mention of retail in the definition. So I think that, it's probably right to move forward with kind of thinking about that a little bit more. I did look into different surveys different communities had done, because I think it seemed that you guys expressed a desire to understand what the public wants. And there's a lot of complicated stuff with these surveys. Some of them are pretty intense, and I know that Sarah seemed to know a lot and has a lot of experience, and she seemed to kind of even express maybe an interest in doing like a subcommittee. So I don't know if that's something the rest of you are in favor of, but it seems like a really great way to approach this.
Yeah.
But something you can talk about if you'd like.
Well, I think if Sarah's willing, it would be a very good thing to find out more information about this. If Sarah would conduct a subcommittee.
Yeah, I'd be happy to put together a subcommittee and then work on both the survey for this so we can get data from the town. And I think outreach a little bit to the state and neighboring communities too, and other towns to see what are some of the best practices that have worked or not worked.
Yeah.
You can certainly talk to the American Planning Association and kind of get a feel from them too about what the state versus federal regulations and our possible liabilities would be. And then again, survey the town and then start to draft some of the initial regulations here that we can present to planning and zoning and for public hearing.
Terrific. So we would need a motion to set up a subcommittee on this, right, Ty?
And
Yeah.
Ty, would that involve just members of the commission, or could outside members of the community be on the subcommittee too?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you guys traditionally have, I mean, from what I've known of, you usually have just your members do it, but I think you have the opportunity to go outside your own commission if you wanted to. Correct? I think you guys might know better than I do. I feel like I remember the subdivision subcommittee was all members of planning and zoning. But I do know that other commissions tend to branch off into other.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've had a subcommittee. I can't recall on the horizon line, we had a subcommittee for that, that if we had outside members.
That was basically all members and our consultant at the time, from HBA.
I think maybe it's a preference.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's any prohibition for it. So Sarah, if you think that that's, I suspect that you would be chairman of this subcommittee.
Yeah, I'd like to get, I think probably keep it to the commission right now, but if we can find an outside advisor, perhaps finding somebody at the state level would be appropriate for that too, which we can kind of charge the subcommittee to appoint that person.
All right.
Excuse me, can you define again what the subcommittee, not what subcommittee means, but this is a subcommittee of what? I can't, sort of lost track. We keep calling it a subcommittee to do what again?
I would call it to survey and review and write the initial cannabis regulations for the
Okay.
town.
Okay,
So it's a subcommittee of Planning and Zoning Commission.
right. Okay.
So Sarah, if you'd set that up, I'll serve as a member as well.
Excellent. And I guess, is this a time for everybody to sort of say whether or not they would be interested in that? In serving?
Well, this would be a time, but I suppose that they want to join at a later date. That'd be great too.
And Ty, could we send this out to the remaining members who weren't able to be here tonight?
Sure. So, maybe we'll just have it back on the agenda to officially set it up at next month's meeting.
Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you, Sarah. All right. Anything else on staff report? Ty?
Nope.
Nope. Great. There's no report of officers and committees because we don't have any committees right now. Administrative permits weren't too many, but and what was this Connecticut Federation of P&Z agencies? No, that's just a quarterly newsletter.
Yep, and there was also an article that Sarah shared regarding Airbnbs and VRBOs that she just thought the commission might have some interest in. So that was in the correspondence.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that was a Supreme Court ruling, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and that was also addressed in the newsletter that Ty sent around too. It was a section in that as well.
Yeah.
And for anyone who is going to serve on the cannabis subcommittee, there is a section in the newsletter that Ty circulated too about regulations here in the state.
Okay, I'll be sure to read that. Yeah. All right, so we need to go. We have executive session, right? We have the attorneys are here.
Yep, Attorney Ziska is here.
Okay, great. Hey, Mike.
Hi. Let me.
So
here we are.
So do I hear a motion to go into executive session?
I make that motion.
Thank you, Daryl.
Second.
Session.
Okay, Sarah, I believe you had a question about whether or not if the commission is going back to considering making additional changes regarding cannabis, whether a moratorium could be implemented.
Yeah. similar to what we did with the subdivision regulations when that was in place. And I will also state, there is one business in town that, as Ty, I think would note, kind of came in, they do sell hemp-related products. And so came in under what might be considered disingenuous circumstances by saying that they were selling other things and then also were selling hemp products at the same time. So they did kind of slip in under that. And I think we want to be mindful of that and also give us some time to write the regulations without feeling pressured that we've, so that we've got an answer for businesses that do want to potentially come in at that stage.
Right. Yeah, this is kind of a confusing area of the law because of the way the legislature went about doing this. Basically saying, well, unless you have regulations in place by such and such a date, then the way we're going to deal with this is that if somebody comes in with an application for, some cannabis related thing, then you're going to deal with that as you would deal with a similar type of use that did not involve cannabis. So the two aspects of that are tricky. Well, I mean, there are multiple aspects that are tricky, but the two trickiest parts is, first of all, when they said, if you don't make your regulation by that date, then this is what's going to happen. Did that mean that you can't make a regulation after that? I don't think it meant that. I don't think it meant that. I think what that meant is if you don't have something in place by then and somebody comes in, that's how you're going to deal with it. But it didn't stop you from doing something later. So for instance, let's say you were supposed to make a decision by January 1st of 2023, and you didn't make that decision until April of 2025. What that would mean is anybody who came in between January 1 of 2023 and April 1 of 2025, you have to treat them the way the statute says. You have to deal with it as though it's a similar type of use. It doesn't involve cannabis. But I don't think it stopped you from changing those regulations afterward. I just think it was basically saying this is what happens in the interim. So can you enact a moratorium? There is limited case law, but it's favorable on the issue of moratoriums. The issue came up in the context of subdivisions. That's the only time I've actually seen moratoria dealt with by the Connecticut courts. And the question was, can you put a subdivision moratorium on? Can you prevent people from subdividing their property during a moratorium? And the court said, yes, you can do that as long as the moratorium is limited and you have a reasonable basis for enacting the moratorium. So the law that came out of that was you should have a good reason for what you're doing. And the good reason is we're conflicted about how to deal with this. We're unsure of how to deal with this, and we need time to look into it more fully. So that's been a good reason for the subdivision review. That should be a good reason certainly for cannabis review. The second thing, though, they said is it's got to be of limited duration. And the reason for that is because you're affecting people's property rights. And so to the extent that you're saying we're going to stop people from being able to do something that they would otherwise be able to do, the courts are uncomfortable with that from a Fifth Amendment standpoint. But they've said it's okay as long as it's limited. They approved, in the case that I'm thinking of, a 6-month moratorium. Most commissions have felt comfortable going up to a year, but I think even more commissions feel let's do a 6-month because the courts have approved that in the past. So we should be able to get 6 months approved as well. So that was a long-winded explanation, which I'm prone to give, but I wanted you to have the background on it. I do think that you can do a moratorium.
I would kind of advise the commission to think about a 6-month moratorium then, just so that it gives us some time to write the regulation and gives the town a little bit of a safeguard during that, so that, we can think about this intelligently, go do our homework and actually get the opinion of the majority of the townspeople as we're kind of going about this too. So I don't know how to enact that. But I think
that's the third thing, Sarah, and thank you for saying that, because a lot of commissions seem to feel that all they have to do is make a motion to have a moratorium, and I don't believe that. I don't think you can do it that way. when you enact a moratorium, what you're actually doing is changing your regulations in a limited fashion. That is a moratorium is a form of regulations, and state law controls how you would amend your regulations. So I think you have to go through that entire amendment process to enact the moratorium. And that would mean you've got to give, notices to the regional planning agency, or, all of these kinds of things. And so and then you're going to have public hearing. So it's going to take you a couple of months to get the moratorium in, just to get the notices out, and then to get your hearing ready, and then to make a decision and publish the notice after you make the decision. It's going to take you at least a couple of months. So just be aware of that. The sooner you get that process started, the better.
So like Sarah was saying, 6 months time, is that too short of a time? Is that not enough time? And a lawyer's portion of it, the moratorium?
Yeah. No, what I meant by that, Chris, was you need 2 months just to get the moratorium established. Once you get it established, it can be 6 months from the time you get it established.
Is 6 months too much time, Mike, or is
I don't think so. I don't think so. It doesn't force you
to go
to wait
longer
6
than
months.
that?
That's where it gets sticky. I mean, the court said it's okay to do 6 months. So I think they probably wouldn't have a problem with 8 months, 9 months. Once you get up to a year, I think there's going to be a little bit more agita.
I'm just more worried about, trying to get the regulations down where it works for everybody,
right?
And not just putting something in place that's going to kind of make it worse for us in the long run.
Well, the other thing though, Chris, is you could have the moratorium for 6 months. If you find at the end of the 6 month period, or as you're getting close to it, that it's not going to work, that you need additional time, you could always add to that time. You'd have to go through the same process, but it would be easier to go through that process the second time around, because all you'd have to do, I mean, you'd still have to go through the notice period and all of that, but
the same 2 month process.
Yeah.
I would think that our working group could probably come up with this 6 month time period. I don't think that would be too difficult for us to do.
And don't forget, your regulations already prohibit cannabis retail sales.
Right.
So that's probably that may be your biggest concern. So even if without the moratorium, you still are not allowing that kind of use. The uses that you are allowing theoretically would be the delivery uses and the growing uses and those kinds of things. But retail, you already do have prohibited.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I would feel comfortable if you made it 9 months or 10 months, something like that. I don't think a court is going to say there's such a huge difference between 6 months and 9 months or 10 months that they're going to, say, oh no, that's illegal. It's just, we know 6 months seems to be a safe harbor because the courts have approved that already. For a different type of moratorium, mind you, but still they've approved 6 months.
And I'd be open to opinions of the commission if you feel that that's doing the moratorium is a step too far, or whether it's a reasonable step at this stage to provide a safeguard for the town while we enact and write the regulations.
I think it's a good idea. I mean,
it's a good idea.
No reason why we shouldn't do that. I mean, we're definitely going to have to come up with, more, I would think more on the agricultural side of it here in town. There's some towns in New York State not far from us that are, giant fields growing throughout the summer. So
yeah, and on caution of all of us too, during that time period, the USDA, the agricultural bill will go through, which will hopefully provide a little bit more definition for us all about the variations between hemp and cannabis, and what that will mean from a USDA perspective too. So there's that gives us a little bit of time to gather some more information at the federal level versus just the state level.
All right, so we can discuss this next month. when
I have
we,
one question, I'm sorry. Is this a moratorium on the commission's hearing about, specific requests? It's just a
Yeah.
more commission, right?
On the application, if we were to receive an application, we wouldn't review it until after the end of the moratorium when we have the regulations in hand to regulate.
Thank you.
Is Mike still on here?
Mike Sill, yeah.
So, Mike, if we receive, say we get the process moving right now on getting the moratorium lined up, and that process takes 2 months, but we receive a application before that 2-month period is up, we have to deal with it at that point?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Which, Chris, might not always be a bad thing too, because it will help us understand the process and see whether or not we're setting a specific precedent that we will continue on with.
So shall we have Ty start that process? A moratorium?
I think so.
I can work on drafting something. I'd like to understand specifically, which parts. I want to cover all the bases. I know retail's not an issue. We want to do agriculture. We want to do delivery.
The easiest way to do it, it seems to me, would be you use the state law, which defines cannabis type uses. That you has a term of art. It's not, I'm not registering it right now, but there's a term of art that they use for all of these types of cannabis businesses. And basically what you could do is say, during this moratorium period, nothing that is defined as a cannabis business or whatever the term is that they use in state law shall be approved.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, and it may come down to cannabinoids and hemp-derived cannabinoids are the sort of sometimes the term of art that the state or the government will use.
Okay. All right, I'll get going on that.
All right, Mike. Well, thanks again.
All right, my pleasure. Good to see you all.
Yep. Bye-bye.
As much as I can see you on the silver screen here.
All right.
Good to be with you. Good night.
Good night.
Yeah.
All right, so we have nothing else in front of us.
That last agenda item, just kind of confirming that nothing happened outside of executive, no decisions were made.
I have a question for Ty. What is happening with 45 on Main and the lighting?
So Mr. Gleason reached out to me. There had been some gooseneck lighting that had been approved as part of their site plan approval, I think in 2019, I want to say 2020. And it looks like they're going to install that lighting. I'm guessing they're going to go forward with the lighting that they never installed, which will resolve their darkness problem and bring them into conformance, so they won't be using the wrong kind of lights for security purposes.
Terrific.
And they've stopped, by the way. They're not those string lights or cafe lights. They put them on a timer, so they're off when their business is closed, they're off. So it doesn't seem to be, on all night long anymore.
Well, that's what we were asking for anyway, so.
All right, so Ty, what were you saying that we need to
I just think yeah, I had that one last agenda item, just kind of, that traditional no decisions were made when you exited.
Okay. So we state that no conditions were made when we exited executive session.
Right. Yep.
All right.
That was a number 11.
So other than that, shall we adjourn with the motion?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
All right.
Second.
All right. See you guys next month.
Take care.
Bye.